Good morning. Last day of my trip here. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to do this in front of a stand of thistles because, I don't know, these thistles are taller than I am. I've never seen anything like it. Got a lot to talk about today. It's the last day of my bike tour in La Mancha. I'm going to El Toboso. You can't talk about Don Quixote without talking about Dulcinea. Dulcinea is his muse, his damsel in distress. I don't know if she's in distress, but his damsel. Don Quixote, like I told you, read all these books. He goes crazy. He decides he's a knight errant. One of the things about knight errants is they have to be in love with someone. They have to have a damsel out there who they are serving. So he just picks a girl from the next town over and makes her his muse. She doesn't really appear in the book. She's sort of the ideal of courtly love in person. She's not actually a character in the book. She's like the invisible character that they've got in sitcoms sometimes. A character that everybody talks about but never appears on camera. So I'm going to El Toboso, which is her hometown. Don Quixote's hometown is never named because Cervantes wanted to leave it as a mystery so that the different towns in the area would fight over, well, who's actually the hometown of Cervantes, which they do in reality. And El Toboso, on the other hand, is named. That is about 50 kilometers from here, and we're riding there. It's going to be great. El Toboso has a house, which is Dulcinea's house, which is interesting because, strictly speaking, Dulcinea is not real. But we're going to talk about what is real a little bit later. So stay tuned. I'm on my way to Arenales de San Gregorio. There's nothing but grapevines out here. I don't even know what Arenales really means at this point. Literally, it's a sandy area, but like, I don't know, is it a mine where they would mine sand for industrial purposes? What are the industrial purposes of sand? I am not sure. In any case, on the way to St. Gregory's sandy area, I wanted to talk a little bit about what is real. The book Don Quixote talks a lot about the idea of what is real, or plays around with the idea of what is real. Cervantes wrote the first part in 1604, as I mentioned. After that, he takes about 10 years off and does other things. He's in the middle of writing the second volume, which at the time was considered to be like a sequel, but now is considered to be the second volume of one work, when another author comes out with a book that's like the continued adventures of Don Quixote. They call this now the False Quixote, and I apologize for my lighting as usual. The False Quixote is anonymously written. I think we still don't know who wrote it, but, you know, some guy in the 17th century wrote this book, which insults Cervantes in the prologue and then has some further adventures of Don Quixote. I don't know if it's even like a good book or anything, but Cervantes is in the middle of writing his volume 2, and he uses this as material for, you know, Don Quixote's further real adventures. Because Don Quixote is real, obviously. These are the real adventures of Don Quixote. The other book is The False Quixote. Also, at the beginning of Volume 2, Don Quixote starts running into people who have read Volume 1, and so they know who he is. And they play along with his little game. And you get to this idea that, you know, reality, or what we call reality, is just sort of a shared delusion. And as more people start sharing in the delusion, it gets even more fun. So at one point in the second volume, Don Quixote and Sancho are, you know, they're in some place and they find a printing press that is printing copies of the false Quixote. There's, you know, all kinds of other philosophical stuff. It gets very meta towards the second part. It breaks, you know, the fourth wall, as we're saying these days. And in 1604, or in, well, 1615, I believe it was, by this point, this was not a typical thing that they were doing in all the books. So Don Quixote is considered to be the first modern novel for this reason. It's modern in the sense that it deals a lot with Don Quixote's inner world, which, you know, previous literature, people just do things. There's not a lot of depth of character. Also, it's modern in the sense that it has this meta level where it's literature about literature to some extent, about the power of literature. Don Quixote's original thing, reading too many books made him lose his mind. And so it's a whole literary adventure about the power of literature. In any case, all of that is not helping me get to Arenales de San Gregorio, so I'm gonna start pedaling again. My tour guide told me about this yesterday, pistachio trees. Never seen a pistachio tree before, but he said they look a lot like the coffee plants that I have seen in pictures. He said they don't need much water, and I guess the seeds will dry out and open up and look more like pistachios, you know, in a few months or a few days, I don't know. But yeah, they don't look much like pistachios now. And that was Arenales de San Gregorio. I saw a lot of older people who were very formally dressed, like guys in suits and their wives all dressed up also. Dudes who were like 70 years old. And all the religious images in the windows, and I thought, like, something must be going on. Turns out it's the feast of San Gregorio today. Unfortunately, I have places to be, so I will never know what it's like hanging out in San Gregorio, Arenales de San Gregorio, on the feast of San Gregorio. But, you know, if you ever go, please write me a comment and let me know. I'm sure it's a blast. Next stop, Campo de Criptana, another famous windmill area. I know nothing about this place except that it has some of the old windmills, and I thought it was the only place that had the old windmills still, but now I know better. There are a lot of places that have old windmills. Campo de Criptana is just one of the most famous. So I will see you there in about 12 kilometers. Check out all this chamomile, by the way, behind me. Chamomile, like the drink. It's called manzanilla in Spanish. It's about the cheapest thing you can imagine because it just grows in, you know, hot places by the roadside or wherever, and I don't even know if anybody farms it. You just can go out and pick it if you really want manzanilla. Made it to Campo de Criptana, at least the outskirts of Campo de Criptana. I got 21 kilometers left on this to El Toboso, so I'm gonna, you know, keep going, I guess. I'm wondering about all these buildings with a blue stripe along the bottom edge. I've been seeing that all over La Mancha. Don't know what the story is. That was Campo de Criptana. We are now on the final stretch. There was a sign back there that suggested that I might be going through some humedales. If arenales are places that are sandy, then humedales are places that are damp. So I guess we might be coming up on the Virgin of Criptana's dampness. Or something similar. I don't know. We'll find out. These things are tinajas. I got the whole tour about them yesterday. Tinaja is the Spanish word. They can be made of clay or out of cement. The cement is the more modern version. The clay is the older, probably the red ones here, or the reddish ones are clay. That's what you used to put wine in before you had, you know, more modern technology. You just make it in these things. The local wine was just pressed and then put in the tinajas, and there's no like barrel phase where it ages for 18 months in an oak barrel. That would be much more expensive. Here they're making, you know, natural and relatively unprocessed, you know, table wine. It turns out there is actually a Virgin of Criptana. I was joking, but I was also correct in my guess that there is a Virgin of Criptana. I figured the chapel on the hill would have something to do with the Virgin of Criptana. I think that's her behind the glass here. Apparitions of the Virgin happen with some frequency out here, or at least, you know, a lot of places have one. Back on the open road, about 15 kilometers left to go. I mentioned back on day one that Cervantes was a slave. He was a slave for about 5 years. After the Battle of Lepanto and a couple years that he spent in Italy, I think, he was on his way back to Spain. His boat was captured by pirates, and he was enslaved along with his brother. He had some letters of recommendation from important people on him, so they thought that he was an important person. They set a high ransom. In these days, apparently, they would enslave you and then wait for your family to ransom you while you were, you know, doing slave stuff. So his brother was ransomed after a while. Cervantes tried to organize some escapes, which didn't work, but he attempted escape a few times. And yeah, he was a slave for 5 years before they got together enough gold to ransom him. Which leads me to my favorite quote from Don Quixote. La libertad, Sancho, es uno de los más preciados dones que a los hombres dieron los cielos. Con ella no pueden igualarse los tesoros que la tierra encierra ni el mar encubre. Por la libertad, así como por la honra, se puede y se debe aventurar la vida. I think I got that right, and mostly from memory. So that is, freedom, Sancho, is one of the most precious gifts which God has given to men. It cannot be compared with the treasures buried under the earth or covered by the sea. For freedom, as for honor, one can and should be willing to risk one's life. There are, of course, real translators who dedicate their lives to things like this and have certainly translated that much better than I just did off the top of my head. A lot of these things tend to lose a bit of their punch when you translate them to English, Cervantes especially. The Spanish is just better. I'm sorry. I am not going to suggest you learn Spanish just so you can read Cervantes, but if you do get a high enough level of Spanish, Cervantes is better in Spanish. Anyway, I love that quote, and I'm guessing that Cervantes had some strong opinions about freedom from his 5 years of slavery. It might be a bit anticlimactic if I take you all the way down to El Toboso. Got another 14 kilometers or so. So I think I'm going to leave it right here. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. 4 days of cycling, about 200 kilometers. My ass hurts. That's anticlimactic. But that's what we do. Do hard things. Be free. Enjoy life. Okay, I made it. I'm here in the shade. Final shout out to Raul at biketourinspain.com for setting this whole thing up. It's been great. Just check out the website, biketourinspain.com. He's got this one, he's got Madrid to Valencia, which is 10 days, and I think he's got a couple of others. Check out the website, it's awesome. All right, have a good one, y'all. Bye.